A humble elderly woman arrives at her son's home, carrying only cloth bags and hope. She's met with contempt by her daughter-in-law, who shoves her into the maid's room, a place far removed from her dignity. But when the truth about her fortune comes to light, everything changes, and she takes back what is rightfully hers. If this story caught your interest, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and let us know what city you're watching from. Let's continue. The Greyhound bus pulled into the Port Authority bus terminal on a warm March afternoon, amidst the crowd disembarking with modern suitcases and colourful backpacks. A woman with grey hair tied in a simple bun carefully descended the steps, clutching two faded cloth bags with both hands. Eleanor was 72 years old and had come from rural Georgia, from a town so small that most New Yorkers wouldn't even know how to find it on a map. Her clothes were simple, a thin floral dress and a worn-out wool cardigan over her shoulders despite the city's heat. On her feet, she wore leather sandals weathered by time. Her face bore the deep lines of someone who had worked her entire life under the sun, tending to the land, the animals, the home. But in her eyes there was a sparkle that no amount of exhaustion could extinguish. It was the sparkle of someone who carried love, a lot of love. Eleanor stopped in the middle of the bustling terminal and looked around. Everything was gigantic, noisy, rushed. People hurried past her as if she were invisible. No one glanced at the old countrywoman lost in the metropolis. She tightened her grip on the handles of her cloth bags, took a deep breath and walked toward the exit. She had the address written on a crumpled piece of paper she kept in her dress pocket. 423 East 79th Street, apartment 805, the Acacia Gardens. Her son lived there, Michael. The son she hadn't seen in 4 years. The son who had left the countryside as a young man full of dreams, promising to visit often, but who had slowly drifted away until the visits stopped completely. Eleanor understood. Life in New York was a race, full of commitments, of responsibilities. Michael had a company, a wife, a teenage son. He couldn't just drop everything to visit his mother in the country. She understood. She always understood. But now she was the one coming to him, because a mother's heart can't bear the distance forever, because she needed to see her son, to hug him, to smell his scent, to look into his eyes. She needed to get to know her grandson, Gabriel, who was already 15 and whom she only saw in photos sent over WhatsApp. Eleanor wanted to feel that she was still part of that family, even from afar, even living so many miles away. She hailed a cab at the terminal entrance. The driver, a middle-aged man in a Yankees cap, glanced at her in the rearview mirror and asked for the destination. When Eleanor gave him the address, he raised his eyebrows. The Acacia Gardens. That's where the rich folks live, ma'am. It'll take about 40 minutes in this traffic. Eleanor smiled shyly. That's fine. Take your time. The driver turned on the radio and started driving. Eleanor stared out the window, watching the city fly by. Enormous buildings, wide avenues packed with cars, glowing billboards, people rushing from one place to another. It was all so different from her small town, where she knew everyone by name, where the roads were dirt and the houses had backyards. A tightness gripped her chest. Did Michael remember where he came from? Did he still carry within him that boy who ran barefoot through the yard, who helped harvest corn, who slept in the hammock under the magnolia tree? 45 minutes later, the cab stopped in front of an imposing wrought-iron gate. Eleanor got out, paid the fare with crumpled bills she took from an old leather wallet, and stood on the sidewalk looking up. The building was impressive, high walls, impeccable gardens, security, cameras on every corner. The doorman, a young man in a navy blue uniform, looked at her with suspicion. "Can I help you?" "I'm here to visit my son, Michael Johnson, apartment 805. The doorman frowned. "Do you have an appointment?" Eleanor blinked, not understanding. "An appointment? I'm his mother." "Even so, I need to call up and confirm. It's building policy." He picked up the phone and dialed. Eleanor waited, holding her cloth bags. She felt the weight of the watermelons, the artisanal cheeses, the jars of homemade peach preserves she had brought as gifts. They were simple things, but made with love. She imagined Michael's joy upon receiving those flavors from his childhood. Mr. Johnson? It's the front desk. There's a woman here who says she's your mother. Should I send her up? There was a pause. Eleanor saw the doorman's expression change. He looked at her with surprise. I see, yes, of course. He hung up and opened the gate, but now with a different, almost embarrassed expression. You can go in, ma'am. Tower B, 8th floor. Eleanor thanked him and entered. She walked through the manicured gardens past a huge infinity pool, a tennis court, a party, room with soaring ceilings. Everything was luxurious, gleaming, perfect. She felt small there with her simple clothes and her cloth bags, but she was Michael's mother. And a mother doesn't need luxury to love. She stepped into the mirrored elevator. She saw her reflection multiplied on the walls. A country woman with deep wrinkles around her eyes, calloused hands, a worn dress, but standing tall, dignified. She reached the 8th floor and looked for number 805. She knocked on the door. The woman who opened it was in her 40s, tall, thin, with impeccably styled blonde hair, a perfect manicure, and flawless makeup. She wore a beige linen dress and high-heeled sandals. Expensive perfume filled the air. It was Jessica, her daughter-in-law. They had never met in person, only in photos and brief video calls. Jessica looked Eleanor up and down, not hiding her unpleasant surprise. "You're Michael's mother?" Eleanor smiled, her heart swelling with emotion. "Yes, I am, dear. I came for a visit. I brought a few things from the farm." She held out the cloth bags. Jessica didn't take them. "Michael didn't tell me you were coming. It was a last-minute thing. I wanted to surprise him." Jessica stood in the doorway, blocking the entrance. Eleanor sensed the discomfort, but tried not to show it. "May I come in?" Jessica took a deep breath, forced a cold smile, and stepped aside. "Of course. Come in." Eleanor entered. The apartment was everything she had imagined and more. Marble floors, designer furniture, crystal chandeliers, modern art on the walls, so different from the simple house where she had raised Michael, with its polished concrete floors and wooden furniture made by her own husband, who had passed away so many years ago. "Please, have a seat." Jessica pointed to a white leather sofa. Eleanor hesitated. Her clothes were a bit dusty from the trip. "Is it all right if I sit just like this? I just got off the road." Jessica glanced at the sofa, then at Eleanor. "Let me get a towel." She went to a closet and returned with a white towel which she placed over the sofa. Eleanor felt her heart sink, but she said nothing. She sat on the very edge, her hands in her lap, still holding the bags. "Is Michael here?" "He's in a meeting. He should be home in about 2 hours." Eleanor nodded. She sat in silence, not knowing what to say. Jessica didn't make conversation either. She stood there, scrolling on her phone, clearly uncomfortable with her presence. "How long are you planning on staying?" Eleanor smiled. "A few days, if it's not too much trouble." Jessica looked up from her phone. "A few days?" "Yes. It's been so long since I've seen my son. And I wanted to get to know Gabriel better too. That boy is already a young man." Jessica took a deep breath. "Look, Eleanor, the apartment is a bit crowded. We only have 3 bedrooms. One is ours, one is Gabriel's, and the third is Michael's home office." Eleanor felt the sting of rejection but didn't let it show. "I don't need a room, dear. Any little corner will do. I'm no trouble." Jessica bit her lip. "There's the maid's room. It's small, but it has a bed." Eleanor nodded, still smiling. "That's perfect." Jessica sighed. "All right then. I'll show you." She led Eleanor to the back of the apartment, to a tiny room with a single bed, a small closet, and a little window that faced an air shaft. It was hot, stuffy, with no fan. Eleanor put her bags on the floor. "Thank you, dear. This is wonderful." Jessica crossed her arms. "Did you bring a lot of luggage?" "Just these bags. There are some watermelons, some cheeses, peach preserves, things from the country." Jessica made a face. "Watermelon? We don't eat watermelon. Michael is on a low-carb diet." Eleanor blinked. "Low carb?" "It's a diet with no carbohydrates, no sugar, no sweets, no high-sugar fruits." Eleanor was speechless. She remembered how much Michael had loved watermelon as a child. He would eat it sitting on the kitchen floor, juice dripping down his chin, laughing. Had he really changed that much? I see, but I also brought some cheeses. Cheese doesn't have sugar. Jessica rolled her eyes. Artisanal cheese isn't FDA approved. We don't know where it's from. I'd rather not risk it. Eleanor felt tears burn in her eyes, but she didn't cry, she just nodded. All right, I'll eat them. Jessica glanced at her watch. I have to go now. I have a Pilates class. Make yourself at home. Just please don't touch anything. She left without waiting for a reply. Eleanor heard the door slam and was left alone in that stuffy little room, sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at her cloth bags. She thought about going home. She thought about taking a cab back to the bus terminal and disappearing before Michael arrived. But no, she hadn't come all the way to New York to give up at the first hurdle. She had come for her son. She had come for her grandson. She had come because her heart told her to. She stood up, washed her face in the tiny bathroom next to the maid's room, changed her clothes, and decided to wait. She left the little room and went to the living room. She looked around. Everything was too perfect, too organized, too cold. There were no family photos on the walls, just expensive abstract paintings. There were no mementos from Michael's childhood, nothing that showed where he came from. She went to the kitchen. It was enormous, fully equipped with state-of-the-art appliances. She opened the refrigerator. It was filled with glass containers with labels: quinoa salad, grilled chicken, steamed vegetables. Everything measured, everything controlled. No homemade seasonings, no smell of real food. She closed the refrigerator and went back to the living room. She sat on the sofa, this time without the towel, and waited. The hours passed slowly. Eleanor had almost dozed off when she heard the door open. She stood up quickly. It was Michael. He walked in carrying a briefcase, wearing an impeccable grey suit, a silk tie, and gleaming Italian leather shoes. He was 45, with greying temples, a tense face, a tired expression. When he saw his mother in the living room, he stopped dead. "Mom?" His voice was low, surprised, almost startled. Eleanor smiled, her eyes filling with tears. "Hello, my son." Michael dropped his briefcase on the floor and went to her. They hugged. Eleanor felt her son's body now stronger, more muscular, so different from the skinny boy he had been. But he was still her son. He still smelled like him, even under that expensive cologne. "What are you doing here?" "I came to visit you, son. It's been so long." Michael pulled away, running a hand over his face. "But you should have called first, Mom. I would have picked you up from the station. I would have prepared everything properly." "I wanted to surprise you." He looked around, nervous. "Is Jessica home yet?" "She is. She went to Pilates." Michael sighed. "Did she treat you well?" Eleanor hesitated. "She did, son. She even gave me the maid's room to stay in." Michael looked down. "It's just that the house is really full, Mom. We don't have a guest room." "I know, son. It's no problem." He fell silent, not knowing what to say. Eleanor realized something was wrong. Michael wasn't happy to see her. He was embarrassed, ashamed. "Where's Gabriel?" "He must be in his room. I'll go get him." Michael went down the hall and knocked on one of the bedroom doors. "Gabriel, come here." The door opened and a skinny teenager with messy brown hair emerged, wearing headphones and staring at his phone. He had his father's eyes, but his expression was more closed off, more distant. "What is it?" Michael pointed to the living room. "Come say hello to your grandmother. She came from Georgia to visit us." Gabriel took off his headphones and looked at Eleanor. For a moment their eyes met. Eleanor saw in that boy the same loneliness she felt. She saw a boy lost inside that huge, cold house. "Hey, Grandma." His voice was emotionless. Eleanor approached and tried to hug him, but Gabriel just stood there, awkward, not knowing what to do with his arms. She kissed his forehead. "What a handsome young man you've become, my grandson. A grown man." Gabriel gave a half smile and went back to his room. Michael sighed. "He's always like that, Mom. He's a teenager, glued to his phone." Eleanor nodded, but she knew it was more than that. There was something deeper in that family, a distance that couldn't be measured in miles. The front door opened again. It was Jessica, back from Pilates, sweaty, in tight workout clothes and holding a water bottle. When she saw Michael and Eleanor in the living room, she forced a smile. "Hi, honey. See your mother's here?" Michael nodded. "I see. We were just talking." Jessica went to the bedroom to change. When she returned, her expression was different, more controlled, colder. "Michael, we need to talk. In private." They went into the bedroom and closed the door. Eleanor was left alone in the living room. She could hear their muffled voices, but couldn't make out the words. She knew, however, that they were talking about her. She felt her heart ache. She thought of her house in the country, the garden she'd left in her neighbor's care, the chickens that were probably missing her. She thought of everything she had left behind to come here, to try to reconnect with her son. And now she was here, alone, unwanted, invisible. The bedroom door opened. Michael came out, his face even more tense. "Mom, Jessica's worried. She thinks you might feel out of place here. New York is very different from the country. It's noisy, there's pollution. It's always a rush." Eleanor got the message. They wanted her to leave. "I didn't come to be a burden, son. I just came to spend a few days with you all, to miss you less." Michael ran a hand over his forehead. "I know, Mom, but it's just not a good time right now. I'm having a lot of problems at the company, a lot of pressure. Jessica's stressed out too. Maybe it would be better if you went back and we could plan a visit for another time, over a holiday, I don't know." Eleanor felt tears well up in her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. "All right, son, if that's what you want." Michael hung his head, ashamed. "It's not what I want, Mom. It's just that things are complicated right now." Eleanor stood up. "I'll leave tomorrow morning then." Michael nodded, relieved. "That's for the best. I'll pay for your cab." She went back to the maid's room and closed the door. She sat on the bed and finally cried. She cried softly, so no one would hear. She cried for the rejection, for the coldness, for the distance that had grown between her and the son she had raised with so much love. She cried for the grandson who barely knew her. She cried for everything. But Eleanor didn't know that this was just the first night of a story that was only just beginning. A story that would forever change the lives of everyone in that house of luxury and appearances. Because sometimes you have to hit rock bottom to understand what truly matters. And sometimes the simplest people carry the greatest wealth within them, the kind that can't be bought, sold, or flaunted, the kind that is called dignity. And Eleanor had dignity to spare. Night fell over New York. The city lights twinkled below, millions of bright dots that looked like fallen stars. Eleanor looked out the small window of the maid's room and saw the vastness of the metropolis. She felt small, lost, alone, but not defeated, never defeated. Because a mother doesn't give up. She never gives up, and she still had a lot to teach that family, a lot to show, a lot to reveal. She closed her eyes and fell asleep, lulled by the distant sound of cars on the avenue, dreaming of her country home, of the smell of coffee brewed in a cloth filter, of the sound of birds singing in the yard, dreaming of a time when Michael was still the boy who ran barefoot through the yard, who hugged her before bed, who told her he loved her every day. That time still existed somewhere. Eleanor knew it, and she was going to find it again, one way or another, because a mother's love knows no distance, it knows no time, it knows no defeat, and this was just the first night of a journey that would change everything. Eleanor woke before sunrise, a lifelong habit from the country, where the day begins when the rooster crows and the hens leave their roost. She sat on the edge of the hard bed in the maid's room and looked around. For a moment she forgot where she was. Then reality hit her like a punch to the gut. She was in New York, in her son's house. But she wasn't welcome. She got up, carefully folded the sheet and made the bed. She went to the tiny bathroom, washed her face with cold water, and tied her grey hair into its usual bun. She put on the same floral dress from the day before. She hadn't brought many clothes. She hadn't imagined she would be staying long, or maybe deep down she knew she wouldn't be invited to stay. She opened the door to her room slowly, trying not to make a sound. The apartment was still asleep. She walked barefoot down the hallway, feeling the cold marble under her feet. She went to the kitchen and stopped at the doorway. Everything gleamed. The granite countertop, the stainless steel appliances, the floor that reflected her image like a mirror. She felt out of place there, like a smudge on a perfect painting. But she couldn't resist. She opened the cabinets, looking for coffee. She found an expensive Italian espresso machine, full of buttons and lights. She didn't know how to use it. She searched some more and found in the back of a high cabinet a forgotten cloth coffee sock, probably left by the former housekeeper. She smiled. This she knew how to use. She made coffee the way she had her whole life. She heated the water, put the grounds in the cloth filter, and let it drip slowly. The aroma rose through the kitchen and spread throughout the apartment. The smell of home, the smell of childhood, the smell of something real. She was pouring the first cup when she heard footsteps. It was Jessica, in a pink silk robe, her hair disheveled, her expression annoyed. "What are you doing?" Eleanor smiled. "I made coffee, dear. Would you like a cup?" Jessica looked at the cloth filter as if it was something disgusting. "We don't use that. We have an espresso machine." "I know, but I don't know how to work it. I made it the way I know how." Jessica sighed and got a cup from the Italian machine. She took a sip and grimaced. "This coffee is too strong. And where did you get that old filter?" "I found it in the cabinet." Jessica grabbed the filter and threw it in the trash. "This is from when the old housekeeper worked here. It's no good anymore." Eleanor felt her heart sink, but she said nothing. Jessica poured herself a green juice from the fridge and went to the living room, leaving her dirty coffee cup in the sink. Eleanor washed the cup, put everything away, and went back to the maid's room. She sat on the bed and waited. She waited for the day to break, waited for the house to wake up, waited to be called. But no one called her. Around 9 in the morning, she heard voices in the living room. She left her room and saw Michael, already dressed in a suit, briefcase in hand, ready to leave. "Good morning, son." Michael turned as if he had forgotten she was there. "Good morning, Mum. Did you sleep well?" "I did." He glanced at his watch. "Look, I'm heading out now. I have several meetings today. Jessica will be home. If you need anything, you can ask her." Eleanor nodded. Michael gave her a quick kiss on the cheek and left. Jessica appeared in the living room, already dressed in tight white pants and a blue silk blouse. "Eleanor, I have to go out too. I have some things to take care of. Make yourself at home. Just please don't touch anything." Eleanor forced a smile. "Don't worry, dear." Jessica grabbed her designer handbag and left. The door slammed, and Eleanor was alone in the huge, silent apartment. She walked through the living room, looking at the abstract paintings, the expensive decorations, the designer furniture, all so beautiful but so empty. There was no warmth. There, no life. She went to the kitchen and decided to do something. She couldn't just sit still. She opened the refrigerator, saw the containers of measured and labeled food, and had an idea. She would make a real lunch. A lunch like she used to make in the country, with real food, real seasoning, real love. But when she opened the cabinets, she realized there was nothing. No garlic, no onions, no fresh herbs, just little jars of dried herbs with strange names. No regular rice, just brown rice, no beans, nothing that resembled home cooking. She gave up. She sat on the living room sofa and stayed there, quiet, looking out the enormous window at the city. New York was a sea of buildings and concrete, so different from the green fields of Georgia, the mountains on the horizon, the smoke-free blue sky. The hours passed slowly. Eleanor had almost dozed off when she heard the front door open. It was Gabriel, coming home from school. The boy walked in with his backpack on, headphones in, eyes glued to his phone. He walked right past her without a word. "Gabriel, my grandson." He stopped, taking off his headphones. "Hey, Grandma. How was school?" "Fine." He stood in the middle of the room, clearly not knowing what to do. Eleanor sensed the distance between them. This boy was her grandson, her blood, but he was a stranger. "Do you want to talk for a little while? It's been so long since I've really seen you." Gabriel shrugged. "I don't have much to say." Eleanor smiled. "Then I'll talk. Sit here with me." Gabriel hesitated, but eventually sat on the sofa, still holding his phone. Eleanor began to tell stories. Stories of when Michael was a boy, of when he climbed trees and came back with scraped knees, of when he fished in the river and brought home fish for dinner, of when he helped plant corn and complained about the hot sun. Gabriel listened without much interest at first, but slowly he put down his phone and started paying attention. There was something in his grandmother's words that touched him, an authenticity he couldn't find anywhere else. My dad did all that? He sure did. He was a boy full of life. He loved the country. Said he was going to have a farm when he grew up. So, what happened? Eleanor sighed. Life happened, my grandson. He wanted to go to college, to make something of himself, to succeed. So he came to New York. He built all of this. But I think he forgot where he came from. Gabriel was silent, thoughtful. Then he asked, Grandma, are you happy back in the country? Eleanor smiled, her eyes misty. I am, my boy, very happy. I have my simple little house, my garden, my chickens. I wake up to the sound of birds and go to sleep to the sound of crickets. I know everyone in town by name. I don't have luxury, but I have peace. Gabriel looked around the apartment. We have everything here, but nobody's happy. The words came out low, almost a whisper, but Eleanor heard them, and she understood. This boy was lonely as she was. Do you all talk? You, your dad, and your mum? Gabriel laughed without joy. My dad lives at the office. My mum lives at the gym, in stores, at salons. We live together, but we're all in our own worlds. Eleanor placed her wrinkled hand over her grandson's. And you, how do you live? Gabriel swallowed hard. I survive. Eleanor's heart broke. She was looking at a rich boy who had everything but was dying inside, dying of loneliness, of a lack of affection, of a lack of purpose. You know what we're going to do? We're going to bake together. Gabriel frowned. Bake? Yes. I'm going to teach you how to make a cornbread cake that your father used to love when he was a boy. But we don't have any cornmeal here. Eleanor stood up. Then we'll go buy some. Will you come to the market with me? Gabriel hesitated. He had never been to the market with anyone. The housekeeper did the shopping, but there was something in his grandmother's invitation that made him agree. Okay, I'll go with you. They went downstairs together. Eleanor asked the doorman for directions to a market, and he pointed to a supermarket 2 blocks away. They walked along the sidewalk, Gabriel with his hands in his pockets, Eleanor clutching her old purse. People rushed past, no one looking at anyone else. Eleanor missed her small town where everyone said hello. They entered the market. Eleanor was amazed by the size, the number of products, the prices on the tags. Everything was expensive here. But she didn't give up. She bought cornmeal, eggs, milk, sugar, baking powder. Gabriel carried the small bag, and they walked back home. In the kitchen, Eleanor taught her grandson how to make the cake. She taught him how to crack the eggs, mix the batter, grease the pan. Gabriel did everything carefully, concentrating, and for the first time in a long time, he seemed relaxed. While the cake baked in the oven, they talked. Eleanor told more stories, and Gabriel asked more questions. The distance between them began to shrink. When the cake was ready, the smell filled the apartment. The smell of childhood, the smell of home, the smell of love. Gabriel ate a slice while it was still warm and closed his eyes. This is so good, Grandma. Eleanor smiled, her heart full. It's made with love, my grandson. That's the difference. They were laughing together when Jessica arrived. She walked through the door carrying shopping bags from expensive stores and stopped when she smelled the cake. What is this? I made a cornbread cake for Gabriel, Eleanor said. Jessica threw her bags on the sofa and went to the kitchen. She saw the mess in the sink, the ingredients scattered on the counter, the dirty pan. Who's going to clean all this up? I'll clean it, dear. Don't you worry. Jessica looked at Gabriel, who still had crumbs on his lips. Gabriel, you know you can't eat this stuff. It has too much sugar, too many carbs. Your father will be furious. But it's delicious, Mom. Jessica took the cake and threw it in the trash. Gabriel's eyes widened. Mom, why did you do that? Because it's not healthy. We have rules in this house. Eleanor felt anger rise within her, but she controlled it. It wasn't her house. She couldn't start a fight. Gabriel stormed out of the kitchen and slammed his bedroom door. Jessica looked at Eleanor coldly. "Eleanor, you can't do this. You can't interfere with my son's upbringing. I just wanted to do something nice for him. There are other ways to be nice, not with food full of sugar." Eleanor lowered her eyes. "I'm sorry, dear. It won't happen again." Jessica sighed. "Look, since you're here, could you do me a favor? The housekeeper called out today. Could you do the dishes and tidy up the living room?" Eleanor blinked. "Of course, I'll tidy up." Jessica smiled for the first time, but it was a smile without warmth. "Thank you. I'm going to take a shower." She left the kitchen. Eleanor stood there, looking at the sink full of dishes. She got the message. She wasn't a guest. She was the help. She began to wash the dishes one by one, her hands trembling, not from exhaustion, from humiliation. When she finished, she tidied the living room, mopped the floor and arranged the decorations. Jessica appeared again, already dressed to go out. "Looks good. Thank you, Eleanor. The housekeeper will be back tomorrow, but if you want to help, feel free." Eleanor nodded in silence. Jessica left again. The house was empty. Eleanor went back to the maid's room and sat on the bed. She looked at her calloused hands, her broken nails, her wrinkled skin. She had worked her whole life. She wasn't ashamed of work. But this wasn't work. It was humiliation disguised as a favor. She thought about leaving. She thought about packing her bags and disappearing. But then she remembered Gabriel's eyes, the way he had eaten that cake, the way he had smiled while listening to her stories. The boy needed her, and she wasn't going to abandon him. She decided to stay, at least for a few more days, to try to save her grandson from loneliness, to try to rescue her son from vanity. Even if it meant swallowing her pride and accepting being treated like a maid in her own son's house, because a mother can endure anything, even what seems unbearable. That night, when Michael got home, Jessica told him that Eleanor had helped with the housework. Michael said nothing, he just nodded, as if it were natural for his own mother to do the domestic chores. Eleanor ate dinner alone in the maid's room, a plate of undressed salad that Jessica had left for her. She ate in silence, looking out the small window at the illuminated city below, and she wondered how much longer she could take it. But fate, as always, had its own plans, and what Eleanor didn't know was that, at that very moment, a neighbor from the floor below was getting into the elevator, thinking about her. The neighbor's name was Susan, a divorced woman in her 50s who lived for gossip and social media. She had seen Eleanor around the building a few times and was intrigued. Who was this plainly dressed old woman living in the Johnsons' apartment? Why had she never seen her before? Susan was the type who didn't let anything go, and she was going to find out the truth, one way or another. Eleanor's story was just beginning, and what was to come would change everything forever. Eleanor woke up with an aching body. She had spent the previous day cleaning the entire apartment, doing laundry, ironing, and organizing closets. Jessica handed out tasks like orders, and Eleanor complied in silence. Michael came home late at night and barely looked at his mother. Gabriel stayed locked in his room, only coming out to eat and go to school. The house remained beautiful on the outside, but it was rotting on the inside. She got out of the narrow bed and went to the small bathroom. She looked at herself in the mirror. She was thinner, with dark circles under her eyes, her face weary, but her eyes still sparkled, because Eleanor was not the type to give up. She never had been. That morning, Jessica appeared at the door of the maid's room with a dress in her hands, a simple grey dress with a white apron, a maid's uniform. "Eleanor, we're having guests for lunch today. I need you to wear this and help serve." Eleanor looked at the uniform, feeling her blood boil. "I'm not a maid, dear." Jessica smiled coldly. "I know, but it's just for today. People can't know you're Michael's mother. It would be awkward." "Awkward? Why?" Jessica sighed, impatient. "Because you don't fit into our social circle, Eleanor. You're from the country, you talk differently, you dress differently. My friends would find it strange, so it's better if you pretend to be the maid just for today." Eleanor felt tears burn her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. She took the uniform from Jessica's hands. "All right, I'll wear it." Jessica smiled, satisfied. Thank you. Oh, and when you're serving, don't talk much. Just serve and that's it. She left the room. Eleanor stood there, holding the uniform in her trembling hands. She thought about refusing, about screaming, about saying she wouldn't accept this humiliation. But she thought of Gabriel, who was growing closer to her every day, who came to the maid's room every night to talk, to listen to stories, to escape his loneliness. If she left now, the boy would be alone again. She couldn't do that to him. She put on the uniform. She looked at herself in the mirror. She looked like someone else, an invisible person with no name, no history, just another maid in another rich family's home. She went to the kitchen and started preparing for lunch. Jessica had ordered food from an expensive catering service, but she wanted Eleanor to arrange everything, put it on the nice platters and set the table. Eleanor did everything with care because she didn't know how to do things halfway. She set the table with a linen tablecloth, porcelain plates and silver cutlery. She placed flowers in the center, folded the napkins into swan shapes, and polished the crystal glasses until they shone. At noon, the guests began to arrive. There were 4 women Jessica's age, all elegant, made up, and smelling of expensive perfumes. They wore designer clothes, sparkling jewelry, and handbags that cost more than Eleanor earned in a year back home. They laughed loudly, talking about gyms, cosmetic treatments, and international travel. Eleanor served the drinks, the appetizers, the lunch. She moved through the living room invisibly, her head down, not looking anyone in the eye. The women didn't even notice her. They talked as if she didn't exist. At one point, one of them, a woman with platinum blonde hair and long red nails, said loudly, "Jessica, darling, do you have a new maid? What happened to Maria?" Jessica took a sip of white wine. Maria quit. This one is just temporary. Eleanor felt her chest tighten. Temporary. As if she were disposable. She served dessert and went back to the kitchen. She was washing dishes when she heard Gabriel come in. The boy stopped when he saw her in the uniform. "Grandma, what is this?" Eleanor tried to smile. "Your mother asked me to help out today." Gabriel looked into the living room, where the women were laughing loudly. "Did they treat you like a maid?" Eleanor didn't answer. She didn't have to. Gabriel understood everything. He saw his grandmother there, in a uniform, washing dishes, being treated as if she were invisible, and something inside him broke. He took his phone out of his pocket and started recording. He recorded his grandmother in her uniform in the kitchen. He recorded the women in the living room, laughing and talking loudly. He recorded Jessica giving orders to Eleanor as if she were any other maid. He recorded everything. When the guests left, Eleanor took off the uniform, folded it carefully, and left it on the bed in the maid's room. She went to the living room and sat on the sofa, exhausted. Jessica appeared, still cheerful from the lunch. "Thanks for the help, Eleanor. It was perfect. My friends loved it." Eleanor didn't reply. She just closed her eyes. Jessica sensed the tension. "Are you tired? You can rest. There are more chores tomorrow." She left the room. Eleanor stayed there, alone, feeling the weight of it all. How much longer could she take it? How much longer would she accept being treated this way? The next day, she needed to go to the bank. She had some financial matters to resolve, documents to sign. She put on a simple outfit, grabbed her old purse, and left the apartment without telling anyone. She took the elevator down and walked to the avenue. She hailed a cab and gave the address of a bank branch in Midtown Manhattan, one of the city's most exclusive neighborhoods. What Eleanor didn't know was that she was being watched. Susan, the gossipy neighbor from the floor below, was coming back from the bakery when she saw Eleanor getting into the cab. She was intrigued. Where could that maid be going? She decided to follow. She got in her own car and followed the cab from a distance. She saw Eleanor get out in front of an exclusive bank, the kind that only serves VIP clients with assets over $1 million. Susan parked across the street and watched. Eleanor went into the bank. Susan waited. Inside the bank, Eleanor was greeted with reverence. The manager, a man in an impeccable suit named Robert, came to greet her personally. "Mrs. Eleanor, what a pleasure to see you again. It's been too long." Eleanor smiled. "It has, Robert. I came to take care of a few things." They went to a private office with leather sofas, espresso, and imported mineral water. Robert treated Eleanor with the utmost respect, calling her ma'am, pulling out her chair, offering her everything she needed. They discussed investments, assets, and returns. Eleanor signed documents with a calm demeanor, like someone accustomed to dealing with large sums of money. Across the street, Susan couldn't believe what she was seeing. That maid being treated like a queen, that plainly dressed old woman being given the red carpet treatment at a VIP bank. She took out her phone and started taking pictures. She photographed Eleanor entering the bank, the manager opening the door for her. Everything. When Eleanor left an hour later, Susan had already shared the photos in the building's WhatsApp group. The group exploded. Messages flew back and forth. Speculation, theories, gossip. Who was this woman, really? Why was she living in the maid's room if she was so rich? What was going on in the Johnsons' apartment? Eleanor returned to the apartment oblivious. She went inside, put the documents in the bottom of her suitcase, and went to the kitchen to start dinner. Jessica arrived an hour later, looking annoyed. "Eleanor, where were you?" Eleanor continued chopping vegetables. "I went to take care of some things at the bank." Jessica crossed her arms. "What bank?" Eleanor looked at her. "My bank, dear. I have some savings to look after." Jessica rolled her eyes. "Next time, tell me before you leave." Eleanor didn't answer. Jessica left in a huff. That night, when Michael got home, Jessica pulled him into the bedroom. "Michael, your mother is acting strangely. She went out alone today to a bank, and the neighbors are talking." Michael took off his tie, tired. "Talking about what?" "That they saw your mother being treated like a VIP at a bank in Midtown. They're saying she's rich." Michael laughed humorlessly. "My mother rich?" "Jessica, she lives in a tiny 3-room house in rural Georgia. She has a garden and some chickens. She doesn't have any money. But people saw her, Michael. They took pictures." Michael picked up his phone and saw the photos in the building's group chat. He recognized his mother entering the bank, the manager opening the door, the deference. He frowned. "That is strange. You need to talk to her. Find out what's going on." Michael agreed, but he did nothing. He had too many problems to worry about neighborly gossip. His company was sinking. He had debts he couldn't pay, clients canceling contracts, employees threatening to sue. He had taken out high-interest loans and now had no idea how he would pay them back. He was desperate. In the following days, the tension in the apartment grew. Eleanor continued to do the housework, but now with a different glint in her eyes, as if she knew something no one else did. Gabriel spent more and more time with her, talking, laughing, learning. The boy was changing, becoming more inquisitive, more aware, more disgusted with the phoniness he saw around him. One afternoon, while Eleanor was cleaning the living room, the doorbell rang. It was a man in a dark suit with grey hair carrying a briefcase. Eleanor opened the door. "Mrs. Eleanor?" "Yes?" "I'm Mr. Davis, your attorney. May we speak?" Eleanor looked around. No one was home. "Please come in." They went to the kitchen. Mr. Davis opened his briefcase and showed her some documents. "I brought the papers you requested. Everything is in order. The property is registered in your name, with no liens." Eleanor nodded seriously. "And the plan? Is it ready?" "It is. Whenever you're ready, we can execute it." Eleanor looked out the window. "It's not time yet. I need to be sure." "Sure of what?" Eleanor sighed. "Sure. So that my son can still be saved." The lawyer put the documents away. "And if he can't?" Eleanor looked him in the eye. "Then we execute the plan. All the way." The lawyer left. Eleanor remained in the kitchen, thoughtful. Susan, who had seen the man in the suit enter and leave the apartment, rushed to photograph his license plate. She looked it up online and discovered he was a renowned lawyer specializing in family law and estate planning. She shared the information in the building's group chat. The speculation intensified. That night, Jessica announced they were hosting a formal dinner on Friday. Important guests, potential clients for Michael, influential people. And Eleanor, of course, would be serving, in uniform. Eleanor accepted in silence. But something inside her was shifting. She wasn't going to put up with it forever. And when the time came to fight back, no one would be prepared for what was coming. Gabriel watched everything quietly. He saw his grandmother being humiliated day after day, saw his parents pretending everything was normal, saw the falseness of the life they led, and he decided he was going to do something. He was going to expose it all. He was going to show the world who these people really were. He started planning. He took the videos he had recorded, edited them, and prepared captions. He was going to post them on social media. He was going to make them go viral. He was going to destroy the reputation of that hypocritical family, because the truth needed to come out. And Gabriel was going to be the instrument of that truth. Friday arrived. The apartment was decorated with expensive flowers, scented candles, and ambient music. Jessica had hired a sophisticated catering service, but she wanted Eleanor to serve the drinks, clear the plates, and clean up as needed. Eleanor put on the grey uniform for the last time, because she knew deep in her heart that this would be the last time she would accept this humiliation. The guests began to arrive at 8 o'clock. Businessmen, lawyers, doctors, all with their impeccable wives, all smelling of money and power. Eleanor circulated through the room with a tray of champagne, invisible as always, until one of the guests, a man in his 60s, stopped and looked at her intently. "Eleanor? Eleanor Costa?" Eleanor looked up. She recognized the man. It was Dr. Harris, the former chairman of the school board, where she had worked years ago before she retired. "Dr. Harris," the man smiled, emotional. "What a surprise to see you here. It's been so long. What are you doing?" "I'm visiting my son." He looked at her uniform, confused. "But why are you dressed like that?" Before Eleanor could answer, Jessica appeared, pale. "You two know each other?" Dr. Harris looked at Jessica strangely. "Of course I do. Eleanor was the principal of Lincoln High School for 15 years. One of the best educators I've ever known. She shaped generations of students." A silence fell over the room. All the guests stopped talking and looked at Eleanor. Michael turned white. Jessica was speechless. Dr. Harris continued, oblivious to the tension. "You retired about 10 years ago, didn't you? And moved to the country. How's life down there?" Eleanor took a deep breath. This was it, the moment of truth. "It's good, Doctor. Peaceful, simple, just the way I always wanted." Michael approached, trying to control his panic. "Mom, can we talk in the other room?" Eleanor looked her son in the eye. "No, Michael, we're going to talk. Right here, in front of everyone." Dr. Harris realized something was wrong and stepped away, embarrassed. The other guests continued to stare, curious. Eleanor took off her apron and placed it on a chair. She stood in the middle of the room, her head held high, looking at her son and daughter-in-law. "You came to get me because you think I'm some uneducated, uncultured, worthless old woman from the country. You dressed me as a maid because you're ashamed of me. You hid me from your friends because you think I don't fit into your world. But the truth, Michael, is that you no longer fit into mine. You've forgotten where you came from. You've forgotten who you are. You've forgotten everything I taught you." Michael hung his head. "Mom, please." Eleanor felt tears stream down her face. "I raised you alone, Michael. After your father passed, I was the one who worked from sunup to sundown so you could have food on the table, clothes on your back, a school to go to. I was the one who woke up before dawn to do other people's laundry, to iron, to clean their houses, all so you could have a better life. And I succeeded. You went to college, you graduated, you came to New York, you built all of this. I was happy for you, proud. But now I see it wasn't worth it, because you lost your soul along the way." The guests watched in silence. Jessica was as white as a sheet. Michael had tears in his eyes. Eleanor continued, "I came here hoping to find my son, but I found a stranger, a vain, cold man who is ashamed of his own mother. And you know what, Michael? The shame isn't mine. It's yours." She turned and went to the maid's room. She closed the door and sat on the bed, trembling. On the other side, she heard the silence in the living room, then quiet voices, then the sound of people leaving. The dinner party was over. Gabriel, who had witnessed everything from his hiding spot in the hallway, ran to the room and hugged his grandmother. "Grandma, you were incredible. Eleanor hugged her grandson, crying, "I can't take it anymore, my boy. I just can't." "You don't have to. Let's get out of here." But Eleanor knew she wasn't leaving. Not yet. Because she still had one last card to play. A revelation that would change everything, and that revelation was coming. Saturday morning was long and heavy. Eleanor couldn't sleep. She lay on the narrow bed in the maid's room, staring at the ceiling, replaying everything that had happened. The humiliation, the coldness, the shame her son felt for her. But she also thought about her conversations with Gabriel, the sparkle in her grandson's eyes when he listened to her stories, the sincere hug she had received from him after the confrontation. She got up before sunrise, as always. She packed her suitcase, carefully folding each piece of clothing, putting away the now empty cloth bags. She knew this was the last day, the day everything would change. She picked up her old cell phone and called Mr. Davis. "Mr. Davis, it's time. Prepare everything for Monday morning." The lawyer's voice was firm on the other end. "Understood, Eleanor, I'll take care of it." She hung up. She took a deep breath. There was no turning back. In the living room, Michael woke up on the sofa where he had slept after arguing with Jessica the night before. His wife was furious, blaming him for everything, saying he had destroyed the family's reputation, that no one would respect them anymore. Michael was exhausted, financially broke, and emotionally shattered. He looked at his own hands and saw they were shaking. He went to the maid's room. He knocked on the door. Eleanor opened it, already dressed, her packed suitcase at her feet. "Mum, we need to talk." Eleanor motioned for him to come in. They sat on the edge of the bed, side by side, not looking at each other. "I know I disappointed you," Michael began, his voice choked with emotion. "I know I've become someone you don't recognize. But I was so scared, Mum, scared of failing, scared of being poor again, scared of losing everything I've built." Eleanor looked at her son. "And what have you built, Michael? Look around. You have a beautiful apartment, expensive clothes, an imported car. But you have no peace. You have no love. You don't have a real family." Michael hung his head. "I know. And you know what's worse? You have a son who is suffering. A son who feels lonely, abandoned, invisible, just like you made me feel all these days." Tears streamed down Michael's face. "Forgive me, Mum, please forgive me." Eleanor took her son's hand. "I forgive you, my son. I always forgive you. But forgiving doesn't mean forgetting, and it doesn't mean things will go back to the way they were." "What do you mean?" Eleanor took a deep breath. "You'll find out on Monday." Michael was about to ask more, but just then Gabriel knocked on the door. He came in with his phone in his hand and a determined expression. "Grandma, Dad, you need to see this." He showed them the phone. He had just posted a video on social media. The video showed Eleanor in her uniform serving dinner, Jessica giving orders, the guests laughing and treating his grandmother like a maid. The caption read, "My grandmother, a dignified woman who worked her whole life, raised my father alone, and is now treated like a maid in her own son's house. This is what happens when we forget where we come from." The video had been posted 2 hours ago. It already had 15,000 views, 1,000 comments, and hundreds of shares. And it was still growing. Michael turned pale. "Gabriel, what have you done?" Gabriel looked his father straight in the eye. "I did what I had to do. I exposed the truth." At that moment, Michael's phone started ringing. It was an important client, then another, all of them cancelling contracts, saying they no longer wanted to do business with him. Michael watched his company crumble in real time. Jessica burst into the room, hysterical, her own phone in her hand. "Have you seen this? We're being destroyed online. My entire family has called me. My friends are blocking me. This is a catastrophe." She looked at Gabriel with hatred. "You've ruined our lives." Gabriel didn't back down. "I didn't ruin anything. I just showed who you really are." Jessica looked at Michael. "Do something. Sue him. Take the video down." Michael looked at his son. For the first time in years, he really looked. He saw a brave, honest, principled boy. Everything he himself had ceased to be. "I'm not doing anything." He's right. Jessica was speechless. Eleanor watched everything in silence. Gabriel hugged his grandmother. Grandma, now everyone knows the truth. No one will ever humiliate you again. Eleanor kissed her grandson's forehead, emotional. Thank you, my angel. You're braver than you know. Sunday was tense. The video continued to go viral. Journalists started calling, asking for interviews. The building became a hotbed of gossip. Susan reveled in it, sharing the video in every group she was in. Eleanor's story was everywhere. Jessica locked herself in her room, making desperate phone calls. She was trying to convince Michael to take drastic action, a legal conservatorship. If they could prove Eleanor was senile, incompetent, they could take control of her assets. After all, if the old woman had as much money as the rumors suggested, why not take it? Michael, desperate, with his debts, began to consider the idea. But on Sunday night, just as he was about to agree, he looked out the window and saw Gabriel and Eleanor in the building's garden. His grandmother was telling stories, and his grandson was laughing. There was light there, there was love. Things he hadn't seen in his own life for so long. He made a decision. He wasn't going to do it. He wasn't going to betray his mother again. Monday dawned overcast in New York. Eleanor woke up early, put on her best clothes, carefully pinned up her hair, and waited. At 9 o'clock, the doorbell rang. It was Mr. Davis, accompanied by another lawyer and a process server. Michael answered the door, confused. Good morning. What's going on? Mr. Davis handed him an envelope. I'm here to serve you with a notice. Michael opened the envelope with trembling hands. He read it, reread it. He couldn't believe it. Jessica read over his shoulder and turned pale. This can't be true. Eleanor entered the living room, followed by Gabriel. She stood in the center, her head held high, looking at her son and daughter-in-law. Oh, it's true. This property, apartment, 805 of the Acacia Gardens, has been registered in my name since it was purchased 12 years ago. Michael staggered. What do you mean, Mum? Eleanor walked to the sofa and sat down. When you came to New York, Michael, you started from scratch. You worked hard, you grew, you prospered. 12 years ago, when you wanted to buy this apartment, you didn't have enough money. You called me, asking for help. I had some savings, money your father left as an inheritance, investments I had made over the years. I sold everything and bought this apartment. For you, for my son. But I put it in my name because I wanted to make sure you would never lose your home, even if your business failed. Michael sat down, stunned. I didn't know. I didn't tell you. I didn't think you needed to know. I thought you were my son, that you trusted me, that you would never treat me badly. But I was wrong. Jessica tried to argue. You can't do this. We've lived here for years. We have rights. Mr. Davis intervened. Legally, the property belongs to Eleanor. You are residents, but not owners. Jessica looked at Michael, desperate. Do something! But Michael was broken inside. Everything he had built was a lie. Even the home he lived in wasn't his. He had humiliated his own mother, the woman who had paid for it all. Eleanor continued, her voice firm. I came to New York because I wanted to see if my son still existed behind this vain man. I wanted to know if the values I taught you were still alive inside you. But I found out they weren't. I found out you've become someone I don't recognize. Mom, I can change. I want to change. Eleanor looked her son in the eye. Change has to come from within, Michael. Not from fear of losing material things, but from wanting to be a better person. She stood up and took the folder the lawyer had brought. I have decided to reclaim this property. As of today, this apartment is mine again, and I'm giving you both 48 hours to vacate the premises. Jessica screamed. That's inhuman. We have nowhere to go. Eleanor looked at her coldly. Neither did I. When I arrived here, I was put in the maid's room. I was treated like a servant. Was humiliated. And I survived. I'm sure you two will survive as well. She turned to Gabriel. My grandson, you have a choice. You can go with your parents, or you can stay with me. Gabriel didn't hesitate. He walked to his grandmother and took her hand. I'm staying with you, Grandma. Eleanor smiled, her eyes full of tears. Michael watched his son choose his grandmother and felt his heart break. "Gabriel, son, please." But Gabriel shook his head. "No, Dad. You had every chance to do the right thing, and you chose the wrong path. Now I'm choosing my path. And it's with Grandma." Jessica burst into tears and ran out of the apartment. Michael stood there, devastated, looking at his mother and son together, everything he had lost because of vanity, pride, and ambition. "Mum, give me one more chance, please." Eleanor took a deep breath. "The chance is right there, Michael, in your hands. You can continue to be who you are, or you can start over, the right way. But that choice is yours, not mine." The next 2 days were a whirlwind. Jessica collected her things, still in shock, and went to live with her sister. Michael, with nowhere to go, accepted a friend's offer and moved into a small apartment in a more modest neighborhood. He lost his company, declared bankruptcy, lost his car, lost everything. But he gained something unexpected. He gained clarity. Meanwhile, Eleanor began to transform the apartment. She called architects, social workers, volunteers. She explained her plan. She was going to turn the space into a shelter for elderly victims of abandonment. A place where people like her, who had been rejected by their own families, could find comfort, dignity, and love. The apartment was renovated. The cold walls were painted warm colors. The designer furniture was replaced with comfortable sofas, large tables where everyone could eat together, and rocking chairs by the window. Photos were hung on the walls, photos of families, of smiles, of stories. The shelter was named the House of True Wealth, and within a few weeks it was full. Elderly people who had been abandoned in nursing homes, who lived alone in empty houses, who had no one left, found a new home there. Eleanor cared for everyone with kindness, patience, and love. Gabriel helped after school, talking with the residents, listening to their stories. And he had an idea. "Grandma, can I create a social media channel to tell these people's stories?" Eleanor smiled. "Of course, my angel. The world needs to hear these stories." Gabriel created the channel. He posted videos every week, telling the story of each resident. Stories of overcoming, of resilience, of love. The channel went viral. In 2 months, it had 500,000 subscribers. In 6 months, 2 million. The stories touched hearts all over the country. People began to volunteer, to donate, to help. Eleanor became a symbol. She was invited on television shows, to give speeches, to tell her own story. But she remained simple. She continued to live at the House of True Wealth, caring for the elderly, living with humility. She reinvested her entire fortune in social projects. She opened more shelters in other cities. She created scholarships for underprivileged youth. She helped families in vulnerable situations, because she understood that true wealth is not what you accumulate, but what you share. Michael, in his small apartment, watched everything on television. He saw his mother shining, saw his son flourishing, saw the impact they were making, and he made a decision. He went to the House of True Wealth on a rainy afternoon. He rang the bell. Eleanor opened the door. "Mom, I came to ask for something." Eleanor looked at her son. He was different, thinner, in simple clothes, without his former arrogance. There was humility in his eyes. "You can ask. I want to work here, not for money, just to help, to learn, to try to be the person you taught me to be." Eleanor felt her eyes fill with tears. She hugged her son. "You are always welcome here, my son. Always." Michael began working at the House of True Wealth. He helped with administration, organized donations, talked with the residents and learned from them. And slowly, he began to find himself again. He rediscovered the boy who ran barefoot through the yard, who had simple dreams, who knew the value of real things. Gabriel saw his father changing and decided to give him a chance. They started talking again, getting to know each other anew, building a real relationship, no longer based on appearances, but on truth. 2 years later, on a sunny morning, Eleanor was watering the flowers in the garden when she saw a woman standing at the gate. It was Jessica, but it was a different Jessica. No heavy makeup, no designer clothes, her face marked by suffering. Eleanor went to the gate. "Jessica. Eleanor. They stood in silence for a moment. Then Jessica began to cry. "I lost everything. My husband left me. He went back to you and Gabriel. My family rejected me. My friends abandoned me. I'm alone, completely alone." Eleanor opened the gate. "Come in." Jessica looked surprised. "You'll let me in? After everything I did?" Eleanor smiled, her eyes misty. "This is a place for people who need to start over. And you need to, don't you?" Jessica nodded, crying. Eleanor hugged her former daughter-in-law. Jessica broke down in sobs, asking for forgiveness for everything, for every humiliation, for every cruel word, for every cold gesture. Eleanor just held her face between her hands. Not every castle is made of stone. Some are built with dignity, forgiveness, and the courage to start again. Jessica began to frequent the House of True Wealth. She went to therapy, worked as a volunteer, and learned to be humble. And slowly she began to transform. She began to understand what really mattered. One day, Michael found her in the kitchen preparing lunch for the residents. They looked at each other in silence. Then Michael asked, "Are you okay?" Jessica smiled. "I'm learning to be." They didn't get back together. Some things can't be undone. But they made peace. And that was more than enough. The House of True Wealth continued to grow. It became a national model. Other institutions began to copy its approach. Gabriel's channel surpassed 5 million subscribers. The stories of the elderly touched millions of people, inspiring and transforming them. Eleanor, at 74, was more alive than ever, surrounded by people she loved, making a difference in the world, being the light she had always been. She had lost a lot along the way. She had been humiliated, rejected, despised. But she had won. Not with money, not with power, but with something far more precious. With love, with dignity, with courage. And that was the true wealth, the only kind that really mattered. Dear listeners, we hope the story of Eleanor, Michael, and Gabriel has deeply touched your hearts. If you were moved by this journey of humiliation, transformation, and redemption, leave a like, subscribe to our channel, and tell us in the comments which moment struck you the most. Was it when Eleanor confronted her son, when Gabriel chose to stay with his grandmother, or when Jessica returned asking for forgiveness? Every day, we bring you intense stories like this one, which reveal the deepest side of the human soul and remind us that true wealth lies in dignity, forgiveness, and the courage to start over. We'll see you in the next episode with another story that will stir your emotions and make you reflect on what truly matters in life. Until next time. Until.